So let's say you found a skeleton. How would you tell if it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
All right, everybody. We are here for Kent with Pen 63 with a Maddie continuing to tell a story well past the 20 seconds or so that I told her we had. But that's okay.
I don't follow directions well.
No, that's okay. What we'll also have with her lovely new green hair. So, let's see. We are here to talk about Matt Powell's presentation at Dinosaur Adventureland, where he actually seems to have been physically present. Where I think Kent is courting him to be the next ex-Mrs. Hovind. Well, not the next one, because he's currently got one that has to become the next ex-Mrs. Hovind, but the one after that. So
yeah, look, you gotta plan ahead for these things.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
I mean, clearly the current Mrs. Hovind isn't going to last. None of them have. I mean, I think his average right now is below 6 months.
Ooh.
I don't know that for a fact, but I think. And Kent Hovind doxed Mr. Atheist Jr. on Whack an Atheist. That's fun.
That's super nice.
And then people are like, oh, hey, how come you're not willing to give Kent Hovind your name and phone number so you can debate him? It's like, oh, gee, I don't know. Maybe that's why.
Because he randomly doxes people?
Yeah.
Jeez.
I mean, he's been known to dox people for quite a while now.
To be fair, Kent Hovind doesn't care about that, so why should anyone else?
I guess that's technically true. All right, so we just got finished with Matt telling us about how he thinks that mainstream science thinks that dinosaurs farted themselves to extinction, which isn't true.
Can confirm. That's not how that works.
Not a thing. And now he is going to tell us about our chickens related to the T-Rex. And you can tell it's a scholarly source because T-Rex is spelled wrong. And for $5 from Carrie Bronson, an offering to the Void and to the lot of you. Also, hi, Maddie.
Hi.
So thank you very much. The Void accepts your offering as it accepts all offerings because, it's an infinite void. It can absorb just about anything. Except uncountably infinite numbers of hotel guests.
That's true.
It could accept that.
Not even an infinite hotel can do that.
Well, if the hotel has an uncountably infinite number of rooms.
Oh, but it doesn't, though. They're numbered sequentially.
Okay, but the Void, though, should be able to take an uncountable number of things.
All right, guys, we got our first schism developing in the Church of the Void. Okay, but here we go. Let's get some Matt Powell in.
Not getting involved.
Here's an article that says, is a chicken a T-Rex? And this is in a kid's book.
It's specifically on a kid's website. Let's go to that website for a second here.
Okay.
So I have Googled this conveniently for us. Oh,
I could also paste the link.
We didn't go through the drinking rules, but whatever.
You didn't go through the drinking rules at all, and I have this drink.
Okay. Well, we'll drink whenever, in this case, Matt gets something right. Or when he says something that's too stupid that we can't not drink, or whenever Mothra or Godzilla come by, or whenever, let's see, he tells a story that we're pretty sure didn't happen. That's another one. And, yeah, I think that covers it. So, there you go. Sorry. So,
I know this is Kent with Bent, but can this technically be Matt with Maddie?
Yes. In fact, Maddie, if you want to do that every once in a while, we can make that happen.
That's amazing.
Because I love it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So so you know how every once in a while, in order to get a pilot going for a TV show, a company will make like a before the other series even starts crossover episode, and then they'll spin off that one-off character into a new thing. Like there's only two options that come to mind right now, and they're both absurdly nerdy. But one was there's a Star Trek episode where there's like a secret agent and a black cat that can talk. And that was originally going to be a pilot for a new show. And then there was also the time that the Power Rangers met Kamen Rider before the Kamen Rider show started as a backdoor pilot for Kamen Rider. This is the backdoor pilot for Matt with Maddie.
Yeah. Also, JAG to NCIS.
Oh, there you go.
Doctor Who reboot to there was like Sarah Jane and K9 and Doctor Who to
Torchwood.
Torchwood. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, this is just the backdoor pilot for Matt with Maddie. There you go. All right, here we go.
The question is, are chickens related to the T-Rex? A child asked this question of the scientists, and
Oh, and I forgot, but we're going to go to this website. This website is dinokids.com. Kids spelled with a Z. So,
Okay, question though. Are these children who are dinosaurs or young dinosaurs?
Great question.
well, so I'm looking through the Dinosaur Kids website, and it looks like the dinosaurs presented don't seem to be, like, obviously hatchlings. But then again, they are also pretty much all represented as if it were, like, Jurassic Park.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it also isn't all dinosaurs. Like, I'm seeing Quetzalcoatlus and Megalodon. Along with-
That's how you pronounce
Yes. But along with some dinosaurs like Carcharodontosaurus and Cryolophosaurus, although the Cryolophosaurus is, like, a weird video game monster and not much like what I would expect an actual Cryosauropus to look like. So this is not exactly someplace that I would recommend that any adult get their information. In fact, I wouldn't even send, say, my nephew here for dinosaur information, because I would provide better dinosaur information for him than this. Yeah. So, I just want to point out here, what Matt right now is complaining about is a website for babies run by people who probably aren't paleontologists. So, we're going to let him complain about it, though. But it's literally like complaining about Christianity because you found, like, baby's first picture book Bible, and you find it inaccurate. Oh! Godzilla! Drink for Godzilla. It's like, oh, you mean baby's first Bible book, picture book, doesn't have, like, you know, the slaughter of all the babies in Canaan? Oh, man! Yeah, no. That's... Here we go. Wait, where'd my mouse go? There we go.
they said yes. And the answer, science has revealed compelling evidence that the T-Rex evolved into a chicken.
Which isn't actually the case. And so, actually, before this, we did a little bit of pre-show talk where Maddie asked whether or not this would be an okay thing to say to a kid. And I don't think it is. Now, here's why. When I was a kid, the way evolutionary relationships were explained to me, even before we really had evolution in school, was that different organisms could be quote-unquote cousins, right? And that relays the idea that while you're not in a direct ancestor-descendant relationship, you share an ancestor in a way that a kid can understand, right? Because even as a little kid, you get that, like, you know, grandma is mommy's mom, and my cousin is mommy's sister's son or something, and so we have the same grandma, right? Like, that's a thing that even very small children can figure out, right? Because they know who mommy is. They can conceptualize mommy having a mommy and a daddy and having brothers and sisters the same way that the kid does, and they know what cousins are usually. So that's how it was explained to me, and that worked because I recognized the idea that, okay, so if bears and dogs are cousins, bears didn't turn into dogs or vice versa, but there was something before either of them that then gave rise to those two. And so you could dumb this down to the kid level, right? By saying that T-Rex is a cousin or an early cousin of the chicken. And that becomes accurate and also reasonably kid-friendly. And that's how, now I realize I'm I'm criticizing a kid's website and not Matt. But Matt's the bonehead. Matt is the bonehead who thought that this was an appropriate thing to bring up in a science discussion about science.
Right.
So, you know, I'm just going to take a quick drink for the fact that Matt thinks that it's appropriate to cite a kid's website that can't spell the word kids or the word T-Rex right. By the way, the correct way to spell T-Rex is capital T period lowercase R-E-X, and you should italicize all of them if you can. If you can't, try to underline them. Can't do either, just do whatever. Don't, I guess.
Dino Kids with an S doesn't seem to be a thing, so it's not like that was taken.
They chose to have that Z, which
They
also
did it on
Mhm.
purpose.
maybe I should buy that domain.
Look, market research
You-
said that kids are a disease. It's a thing. They think they're cool.
Is this like 2015 or something?
It's like 1998.
Yeah. well.
Folks, if it's about survival of the fittest,
Oh, I want to point out this website on the header includes a link to Minecraft and Legos. Top-notch
And
scholarly
also-
work.
Legos.
And also a blog that when I click, it could be my browser, but nothing shows up on it.
There you go.
So I do have browser issues. It could just be that, but come on, man.
and only the strongest survive, and natural selection selects the genes that help.
Notice how he's conflated survival of the fittest with survival of the strongest, because for some reason, creationists think that in evolutionary fitness is the kind of thing you go to the gym to get.
Well, but also like if you just think about that for a minute, right? Chickens can survive on such like if you dumped a family of T-Rexes in the modern world, they would not live very long. One,
No.
we would kill them. Two, what are they going to eat? Right? A chicken can eat like grubs and corn, and they're like omnivorous, and they're good.
Yeah,
Also,
I
chickens.
we
swear chickens
raise
eat
them.
dirt sometimes, and it's enough for them. I know that's not true
Yeah.
technically, but like it's just like you watch a chicken eat, and you're like, okay.
They'll eat
all you need,
almost
that's
anything, and they'll
Mhm.
be good with it. But that's the thing, Maddie. You're comparing fitness in a real world sense.
Yeah.
When Matt literally just said the strongest survive. He thinks that because a T-Rex is stronger, evolution would predict that in all circumstances it should do better than a chicken.
Well, that's silly.
You want to drink for it?
I'll
Yeah.
drink for it. I didn't.
I'll drink.
Now, to be fair, I didn't get this concept until I went to college because I went to a private Christian YEC school that wouldn't teach anything like this.
I went to a private
So
Christian high school, and we just didn't talk about evolution. We just skipped that chapter in the textbook.
I went to a
We-
private
we talked-
Christian high school that
yeah.
did talk about evolution. So we have a
in a
whole
negative
gamut.
way?
No, it was they
Oh,
were just
okay.
teaching evolution. It turns
Yeah.
out that I went to a Catholic school, and it turns out the Catholics don't really have a problem with evolution. Like some
Right.
individual Catholics do, but the Catholic Church as like a hierarchy and an organization has for decades now been like, yeah, no, it's fine. Evolution is fine.
Mhm.
well, again, and the difference is like you can not know something because of ignorance or because you haven't been taught it or whatever, and still be pretty smart and have an open mind and think critically. Or you can be like Matt Powell.
Take
I
the
know which one I'd
dumbest
rather
take.
be like.
I was about to say something, then I realized I was going to accidentally insult his mom, so I'm going to pull that back. I was going to say, like, I think we need to take his science teacher to, like, court or something, but then I realized that he was homeschooled. So,
Well, you know what? That might constitute neglect.
I feel like our good friend, Matt Powell, here is a case study for why all homeschool curriculum should have to be accredited.
Yeah, I find that would be reasonable. I don't know how you would enforce it on the individual scale, but you could say that anything that's published for use in
Mhm.
homeschool curriculum or curricula should have to go through the same kinds of tests.
I mean, aren't
Yeah.
I think there are homeschooling institutions that are
Yeah,
like
there
that.
absolutely are.
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
It's just as easy to do an accredited homeschool curriculum as it is to do an unaccredited homeschool
It's just that
curriculum.
they're not all accredited. I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And like if you do if you do an unaccredited curriculum, then also like your diploma means literally you can't really go, like you would have to go get your GED, right? To move on to higher education or anything like that in
Unless you went to
an
Patriot-
accredited institution.
Yes, to say let's go to Patriot Bible University.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, so Cheshire Vic and I looked into the entry requirements and for their PhD programs. And while one of the options was in fact a master's degree,
Okay.
although it included master's degree from places that weren't accredited, it also
Okay.
said sufficient life experience as an
Oh
option.
no.
Yeah.
Yay.
So like for my program, And for most science PhD programs, you don't have to have a master's, but you do have to have a bachelor's in a related field from an accredited university. But
Yeah. All right, we're gonna hit play.
Help us to survive. Which one is stronger? You say, well,
Probably the one
what if you
that's
had
not
100,000
dead.
chickens versus a dinosaur? I'm sorry, they're not going to win against their great grandfather. Okay, it's not going to happen.
Okay, but like we said, Matt, literally no one says that the way that evolution works is whoever would win in a fight gets to survive. That's
right.
That's not how it works.
Well, because by that
take a drink.
logic, yeah, take a drink. By that logic, we should only predators should be alive right now, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then so now what do they eat? And I guess maybe you can make the argument, well, there'd still be some herbivores because, you know, like cow, like wild oxen and stuff are really strong. Like, okay, that's fair, I guess. But then, like, we shouldn't have rabbits or chickens at all.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so let's get into some proofs of creation. So,
oh, Maddie, this is right up your alley. We're gonna let him go a little bit more.
one of the things, because
Okay.
the evolutionists say that rocks determine how old the Earth is, and rocks are proof of evolution. It must take millions of years for rocks to form. Well, we find helium inside of rock crystals, and so helium actually. Have you guys ever been to a museum where you see rock crystals that have bubbles inside of them? Those bubbles are actually slipping out of the rocks over.
Oh, sweet baby
Oh
Jesus.
my goodness.
Oh, my
wow.
goodness.
Take a drink, everybody.
Honey, no.
So Icarus,
All right.
real quick, there's
What's
a
up,
quick
Icarus?
question. Icarus says, do all birds come from a single species of dinosaur? Yes, because all birds share a common ancestor, and by definition, that common ancestor was a bird, and it was a dinosaur, and it was a single species. Then yeah, that's the case for any clade that you could name. So all mammals do descend from one synapsid species. Go ahead, Maddie.
Okay. If you can see a bubble in a rock that's not moving,
Mm-mm.
it's just hanging out, it's fine. It's trapped inside of there. When we talk about helium diffusion through crystals, that's a thing we can talk about. We're talking about the movement of individual atoms. So this is not a helium bubble. This is nothing that you could like suck on and make your voice go real high, right?
Wait, you mean I can't just pop some quartz in my mouth and suck really hard and then get a squeaky voice?
Absolutely not. It's not
Darn
how
it.
this works.
All right, well,
I know.
I'm gonna have to return all that quartz.
All
I
that
have.
quartz.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So these are individual helium atoms. So
Now, which of those is bigger? The bubble or the helium atom?
the bubble.
The bubble is bigger? Okay.
bubble.
By like
Yeah.
a lot or a little bit?
By like a lot.
Okay. Just making sure that, like, you know, the Matt Powells in the back of the room have enough
Yeah.
context for this discussion.
Yeah, just as a reminder, team, like it was a huge scientific breakthrough within the last 10 years that we were able to take a picture of an atom, right? We were able to zoom in on and see with a camera one atom. So this idea that you're just going to see this like bubble of helium, like that's nonsense. And let's let him talk a little bit more, and then I'll talk more about how that helium is produced and what happens to it and all that
Okay.
jazz.
I knew this was going to be right up your alley because you did that video about it, and it was a great video. So, yeah. Everyone, if you're not already subscribed to Manny's channel, go subscribe. There's some great content over there. Including the weather of Barovia.
There is. There's the weather of Barovia and the weather of Faerun.
For time. And so we find helium inside of rock crystals. If the Earth was billions of years old, that helium would have slipped out. And so once again, this proves that evolution is not true. They're lying to you. They're make-believing.
All right, so Manny, do we expect ancient rocks to contain literally zero helium?
No.
Why not?
Okay. So let me preface this with, there is a longer, more complicated answer than the one I'm about to give, but I feel like the one I'm about to give it is true and it is accessible to the general population.
Fair enough.
The main reason is that so the helium that we get inside of these crystals is going to be coming from the alpha decay of certain long-lived radioactive particles. So uranium, thorium, plutonium, radium, all your favorites, right? All the classics.
And alpha decay is a fairly common decay reaction, isn't it?
It is. It's really, really, really common, especially for long-lived things. So an alpha particle team is the nucleus of a helium atom. So it's a helium atom with no electrons. And so when Matt is saying helium, he's meaning an alpha particle, right? And why do we have different names for these things? Great question. It's when alpha particles were first discovered in like the early 1900s. We didn't know what they were yet, and we later discovered that they were the nucleus of a helium atom, but they already had this alpha particle title. So
it's sort of like how we don't just call beta particles electrons and positrons, even though they literally are.
Exactly. So the most important thing here is that these alpha particles, these helium atoms, are produced like they were produced 4.5 billion years ago, and they're being produced now. So for what Matt is describing to be like true or a good argument, you would need it to be, we have all of the helium we're ever going to have already right now, right? And then that's going to diffuse out of that rock over some period of time. So helium certainly diffuses out of the rock, but it's also constantly being produced, right? So it would be shocking if I found a rock that had no alpha particles, because that would mean every single radioactive thing inside of it had completely decayed, and like uranium has only gone through one half-life, right, in the history of the solar system. Right? These things have half-lives of billions of years. So you can think of it even as we're almost making helium at a constant rate, right? So we're just spitting out helium atoms. So of course there's some that are still around.
Now,
right?
I know there might be someone out there who's going to say, but since radioactive decay is happening according to a half-life, the rate at which we're making these alpha particles is declining exponentially. That's true, but it's on a scale measured in tens of billions of years. So for the course of a few thousand years of human history, that rate has been essentially constant.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Because you always get someone out there who's like, it's actually decaying exponentially. I'm like, yeah, I know. Thanks.
Yeah, but with an e-folding time of the age of the universe.
Right? Exactly. So it's like, so for practical purposes, right now, we can call it steady.
Right. Absolutely. For right now and for the next billion years, it's going to be the same.
Exactly.
It's fine.
So, yeah. So helium is, essentially, there should be a steady state for helium in rocks.
Mm-hmm. And what's actually cool is that what the actual amount of helium in a rock tells you is it tells you the thermal history of that rock, right? Because diffusion is very much affected by temperature. So the hotter it is, the faster these helium atoms are going to move. And so because we can think of it as like almost a constant production rate, so we know how much should be there under X circumstances. If it has more or less than that, then that tells you something about how hot or cold that rock was in its past. So that's actually cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, now that we've got some real science about what helium can actually tell us, let's continue on with the nonsense that Matt wants to spew at us.
What do we got, friend?
In fact, if you ask an atheist sometime, well, since there's no God, what's the meaning of life?
I'm just going to drink for the complete change of topic.
How did we get there? That was
a big left turn.
Listen, let me tell you something about the people that we're kind of rebutting here. They can just say anything at any time, and no one's going to stop them.
That's true.
That's how we got here.
Yeah, that's pretty true. But yeah, that's
a shame.
It's random.
I'm hoping like, oh hey, more talk about rocks. It's like, if you don't believe in God, your life is meaningless. Kill yourself. I'm like, okay, Matt, thanks. That's a great segue.
They say, well, my meaning of my life's, well, I got to make it up. Since there's no God, I just make up purpose.
That's literally what everyone has ever said who doesn't believe in God. Or is it nobody?
Well, it's probably not nobody.
It's closer to nobody than everybody, though.
Probably. But here's the thing, though. Like, even if there is a God who is deciding on a purpose for your life, guess what? You have to choose to accept or reject that which means even if there is a god providing some kind of extrinsic purpose, you can still be like, nah, that's not the purpose to my life. I'm going to make the purpose to my life collecting the most, I don't know, pepperoni slices from Domino's Pizza that anyone has ever collected.
Yeah,
Like,
that's what
okay.
I'm going to do with my time.
I mean, like, you can.
Here's the thing, though, right? Because I definitely grew up adjacent to Matt Powell's world. And, you know, there's definitely, like, an attitude that, like, every single person has this, like, specific calling from God for your life, and it's probably to be a youth pastor, weirdly. Or a music leader or something like that. And I remember, like,
Not something that makes money.
Right, but I specifically remember being like a teenager, a junior and senior in high school, and that feeling like a whole lot of pressure because I was like, I don't think I want to be a pastor's wife, you know? And I remember kind of like having this talk with my youth pastor and being like, I think that God is like more concerned with like how I behave in whatever my future job ends up being than what my specific job is. And thank God my youth pastor was like, that seems reasonable, Maddie. You should get your math degree.
Yeah. Good. That's a good youth pastor there.
That's a good youth pastor.
Yeah.
John's a good guy.
Forget about school. You're a girl. Learn to play the guitar and then have a bunch of kids and make good sandwiches. That's a bad youth pastor.
That's a bad youth pastor, though I do already play the guitar.
Well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with the guitar.
Right.
I'm just saying,
actually,
like...
I mostly play bass.
Nice. Do
I'm
you want
very
to start a
cool.
band?
Yes.
Okay.
If you're in Arizona,
Yes.
Yeah.
it'll be a long commute, but I think we can do it.
Nice.
They have music here, so it's
We
fun.
have music. Okay.
Yes, Arizona does in fact have music. It has not been banned yet.
What?
Making up or make believing a purpose for, they don't think there is purpose, but they've decided to make believe that there is purpose. And you know what, folks? They make it their purpose to tell everybody that there is no purpose.
No.
What does that
No.
mean, and how is that related to helium?
So it's not related to helium as far as I can tell at all. But here's the thing.
Okay.
I think what he's basically saying is that the types of atheists who attempt to deconvert people and get people to adopt atheism are there because atheism is devoid of purpose, which I guess per se it is, but atheists tend not to be because, spoiler alerts, if you're an atheist, chances are you're also a number of other things that you could put philosophical labels on, some of which you can derive purpose from. But anyway, because he thinks that atheists are apparently all nihilists, he therefore thinks that if you're spreading acceptance of atheism on a personal level, you're also spreading nihilism, and that must be your goal if you're attempting to get other people who are not currently atheists to be atheists. That's
But
what
in
I'm
this
going to go with.
moment, is he equating atheism with anyone who is not a young Earth creationist?
I think if you asked him directly, do you think that all non-young Earth creationists are atheists? He would say no.
Yeah.
But I think that in his mind, when he's not specifically thinking about that exact question he does just lump them both together.
Because I think he must, in his worldview, right, all scientists must be atheists.
Well, maybe it's not all the non-creationists, because he probably
All
thinks that like
non-creationists.
he probably thinks that the creationists are scientists.
That's fair.
They're the real scientists, you know. Not the crazy make-believe chickens are T-Rex scientists. No, those are the atheists.
Thanks, I hate it.
Yeah, me too.
They say
I'm
there
just
is no
typing in the
truth.
chat, forming a band with some people. Like, I'm excited.
It's amazing. I
We're gonna have
love
the Dapper Dino band. When
Ooh,
DapperCon
ooh,
happens,
ooh.
you guys are gonna have your first live show.
It's Dapper Dinosaur in the Void.
There you go. Dapper Dinosaur and the Void. Premiering at DapperCon 2028 or something.
Oh.
I mean, by the time I can probably afford to get a con going off of the proceeds of this channel, having it in 7 years is optimistic.
Yeah.
Listen, put that out into the universe.
Yeah. You know what? The power of positive thinking.
Let's manifest that.
All right, I'm gonna name it and claim it. That's a thing, right?
Maybe, I don't know.
I think that's a prosperity gospel thing from like televangelists.
Oh no,
Name-
that's terrible.
name it and claim
Let's
it in the
use their
name of
power
Jesus.
against them. Let's use their power against them.
Yes.
Okay.
Is that true? Because if it's true that there's no truth, how can we be sure that that statement's true? How can we be sure that anything's true?
Oh my goodness. Okay.
I-
Nothing
do you-
about atheism says that there's no such thing as truth.
What drugs
Can
is
we-
this guy on?
I'm drinking for that, but
Can we set up a fund? I want to send our friend Matt Powell here. I would like to pay for him to go to a like solid undergraduate philosophy course, right?
like intro to philosophy.
Yeah, intro to philosophy. And I want him to try to have this conversation with the professor, and then I want to see the bare knuckle boxing match that breaks out afterwards.
Oh, so here's a oh.
Puppy.
Wow.
Hi.
Someone's having a rough wake up.
What's up, buddy? You doing
So-
okay?
I remember taking intro to philosophy and also like what was it? I think it was like Socrates in the same
Mhm.
semester, and thinking maybe I should have taken intro first and then waited a semester.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I did the same thing that I tend to do with classes where I feel like maybe I'm a little bit over my head, is I just broke out the text in Greek, and then that's problem solved. Uh-oh.
I'm gonna bring my sweet old man some water. Sorry.
Do you want us to we'll keep going for a little bit.
No, yeah, keep going. He's just it's like I said, our AC is dying, so it's hot in the house, and he's a
Oh.
large he's a chonky old man. So
Did I say
now I'm
did I say Socrates instead of Socrates? Yeah, we had some students say Socrates. I'm here for the Socrates class. It's like, oh buddy.
Oh,
Yep.
are you sure you're ready for it?
Mark Drysdale, Mr. Powell, there's no such thing as absolute. I don't believe in absolutes. Are you absolutely sure? Folks, this is such basic logic.
Who's he talking
just-
to?
Mark Drysdale is a guy who does some debates on the creation evolution topic, who himself somehow he makes his living owning large animals. I don't know if he's like doing the private zoo thing or if he's doing a sanctuary or what, but I know he owns lions. And apparently his lions
that's amazing.
his lion saved a woman's life last year.
How though?
So she was being attacked by her boyfriend. And so
Okay.
she ran across the street, and she happens to know the lions. So she ran into the lion pen. And
Mhm.
unsurprisingly, her boyfriend did not follow her into the literal lion's den.
There you go, shut up. Hey, buddy.
But
Yeah.
she was pretty convinced that it was a life-threatening situation. And apparently the cops were called later. But yeah, by managing to get into a lion pen, the lions who knew her weren't interested in attacking her. But apparently, they didn't much like seeing him and became rather agitated at that. So, good job,
Yeah.
lions. But here we go.
This goes right over their head. But the Bible says that fools despise wisdom and instruction, so you could actually present scientific.
Okay, hold on. I just like the irony of Matt the Aaron Space Powell saying fools hate knowledge and instruction.
That is amazing. Okay.
Perfect. Oh,
Anybody worried about my dog? He's currently has his dinner and is like up. I think he was just like annoyed at being woken up.
aw, poor buddy.
It was just a very loud protest.
facts to an atheist. And they will despise it. They'll hate it because they hate the truth. They hate instruction. They don't even like science. They'll pretend to like science.
Like
And
you
here's
do?
I just have to drink for projection.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of projection. We can drink for that.
You know, it's kind of funny because I just think of like a toddler saying, "No, I didn't eat the candy bar," and there's like chocolate all over his face. And you just kind of like see how it goes, and then the toddler, when they finally think they've fooled you, and it's just so funny, like how oblivious they are. Matt Powell is oblivious. That is one of the nicer things I can say about him.
That is one of the nicer things you can say.
Yeah. He's lacked a solid science education.
That's true.
I mean, this is the guy who thought that the sun was literally burning in the sense that it was on fire because it was using the oxygen from the air in space.
Yeah.
Like, because I can't think of a reason why he would pretend to think that with a straight face.
Right.
But, like, that's where he went with it, and I'm just like, oh man, no.
Oh, honey, no.
Like, yikes,
Yeah.
this is not, like, 1724. This is
Right.
the 21st century, buddy. This is a little quick Google check away.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, is this stuff is very, very easily, you
Even
can...
not even Kent Hovind
look
thinks
this up
that that's
easily.
a thing.
Well,
He's worse at science than Kent Hovind, despite the fact that Kent Hovind has invited him here as an alleged expert on something.
What's he an expert on?
I don't know.
Should I do this voice the rest of the time?
You could.
To show how seriously I'm taking this.
Yes.
Thing. They always try to throw their own problems onto us. They'll say, well, Christianity, that book right there that you've got, that's a magic book.
I don't remember
can
hearing
we drink
atheists.
for conversations that didn't happen?
Oh, yes, we
Yeah.
can. Absolutely. This is a conversation that didn't happen.
I'm not convinced that Matt Powell hasn't been making up literally everything he's said this entire time.
Well, I mean, the websites he found were websites that did exist. Because we found a lot of them.
Yeah, sure they were. I still don't buy it. I'm not convinced.
So you think that dino-kids with a z.com is actually a website that Matt Powell created so that he could complain about bad evolution takes for kids?
I don't know if he can spell the words like on the page itself this well.
Well, the words on the
But maybe
page,
he can.
some of the
To
words
be
on the
fair-
page were misspelled.
To be fair, I have no idea how good or bad of a speller he is.
Listen,
But it's
my first
possible.
critique for Matt Powell's presentation. Use whatever website you want. Like, I don't care. We're not there yet. Where we are at is just cite your source.
But that's the
I
thing.
don't care.
He did. It was dinokids.com.
Oh, he actually cited that because I was
Well,
looking
no,
at the
I guess
slide and I didn't
I don't think he did actually say it. So that's fair. Yeah, cite your source.
cite your
What came
source.
first, the chicken or the egg? His answer is the egg. Why? Because of dinosaurs. No, that's not him. This is not Matt Paul.
That's
This is
Dino.
just the
That's
website.
Dino
Kids,
Kids,
right?
I mean, I agree with them that eggs did precede chickens.
Mm-hmm.
They were eggs for hundreds of millions of years before they were chickens, I guess.
That's not what the question. Do people really think that's what the question is asking? Like, what
No.
came first, the chicken or just an egg in general, or do you think people actually mean the chicken's offspring? Did the chicken hatch from the egg first, or was there a chicken first and then it laid an egg? So
That's
when they're
a
talking
nice
about
poster.
eggs existing 190 million years and birds are only 150 million years, like, okay, really answering what's being asked.
Yeah.
What's magical? Saying that the universe created itself from nothing. What if I said a giant bowl?
Yes, that's more magical than saying that a god created the universe from nothing. Because if you just stick a noun in front of or in place of the universe, apparently
Then
it's less
It's
magical.
less magic.
Yeah. Now, I'm not actually saying that this precludes the idea that God in some way responsible for the creation of the universe, but it doesn't become less magical by adding a supernatural entity. That's not how the word magic works. When you add supernatural entities, it becomes more magical.
Yeah.
Boulder popped into existence in the middle of this room. Nobody would believe that. But they think that the entire universe popped into existence from nothing with no God.
No.
What if I said,
So I think Matt is imagining that there's an explosion and then it directly creates planets and stars and living things.
Yeah. Well, I will say this. Something that I noticed in my debate with Kent Hovind was his concept of a long time is very, very short, right? Because he like scoffed at me for saying 6,000 years is like the blink of an eye, geologically speaking, right? And so I honestly don't think Matt Powell has a concept of how old the universe is, or let's even go with appears to be, right? And how much we understand about, like, the processes of like phase one stars that would have to go through their whole lifespan before our star could even exist.
It doesn't even start with one. It starts with the population 0 stars.
Yeah, sorry. Yes. Yes.
So the sun is population 2 or 3.
I think it's 2, but don't quote me on it.
That's why I'm like, it's 2. So which means at least 2 stellar generations had to come before the sun, before it could even exist. And the Big Bang didn't pop out population 0 stars. Those formed millions and millions of years after the initial expansion in the Big Bang.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like this whole thing is just there's no real concept of the scale or of space or time involved.
Yes, now I look like a demon.
Yeah, you're backlit.
I'm sorry. The dogs needed to go out, so you guys got a brief tour of my kitchen.
All right, here we go. Let's see what. Actually, I really do think that the way Matt Powell pictures the Big Bang is like an explosion happens, and out of it flies a bunch of dinosaurs, some of whom happen to be lucky enough to land on Earth.
Right, like fully formed stars and planets come out of the Big Bang. I think that's what, in his mind, he's picturing.
Yeah.
Nothing caused something.
That's not how it happened.
No, that is not a good description of the Big Bang.
Yeah.
Explode. What if nothing caused it? See, that's pretty crazy, right? Well, since there was no God, nothing would have had to cause nothing, no time, no space, no matter, to explode.
Or there could be something other than God that exists eternally. Because one of the things is, if you posit an eternal being, you're opening up the possibility that things can exist eternally, which it's then hard to say why that couldn't be, say, energy, which is what we do start off the Big Bang with. Now, does energy have to be eternal? Well, not necessarily, but there is this thing called the first law that makes it seem like it probably is.
And I'll say this, like, we have never observed a process that actually creates energy from not energy. We transfer energy from one form to another all day long, and that's like what a power plant does. But we've never actually seen energy pop into existence from nothing, right?
Yeah.
And we've never seen it be destroyed either, right? So that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. And I know that there's like caveats to that in terms of like the engineering of like a closed system.
Right.
But like, yeah, like please describe to me a process that creates energy, as opposed to transferring it from one form to another.
Right. Oh, there's
All
my
right.
mouse. I keep losing my mouse.
Not good.
No.
That is
Put it on a leash.
really superstitious. If you're an atheist, you're forced to believe in superstition, but yet you'll call the Bible superstition. You want to tell us other Christian college students that the Bible is superstitious when saying that getting jacked in the jaw is what created your beard, or that your ancestor dinosaurs tooted themselves to death. I mean,
I'm just going to drink for the implication that humans are descended from dinosaurs. This isn't the Mario Brothers movie, Matt. Yeah, there's a deep dive into really bad cinema from a few decades ago.
Nice.
If you're a fan of bad cinema, I highly recommend the Mario Brothers movie. It is amazing.
this stuff is just bonkers that they believe. But if you ask Google, how old are crystals? The thing that pops up is that they are the
That's such a weird thing to ask.
Such a weird question. Which type?
It's just like asking how old are dogs. What do you mean? How old are dogs? Each one has its own age. What
Do you mean how long has the species existed, or?
Yeah, I'm taking a drink for that absurd Google question. Although I do like that Google came up with something that is an attempt to answer that nonsense question. Good job, Google.
Mm-hmm.
And JG, yes, that adult did just say tooted.
Tooted.
Vishanti says, "Don't you talk about the Mario Brothers movie that way? Yoshi was perfect. Yoshi is probably he's probably the best thing about that movie, and the Bomb Bomb is probably the second best thing about that movie, and then followed by the Rocket Boots. Now, if you're wondering why,
I'm so glad I forgot all of this stuff from this movie. This
I've
was such
never
a
seen
bad
this movie.
you have Matt.
It-
Mothra came by.
What's up, Mothra?
So my phone is actually unfortunately a little bit far away. I'm going to move it during the intermission.
How many drinks is that?
Oh, it's just one. The Mothra call.
Okay.
There's a few different variations that all play in sequence.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can drink more if you want to.
Oldest crust of the earth. Well, I'm sorry, that air would have slipped out. This proves once again.
What air?
Air.
What are you talking about, Matt? I'm taking another drink. Oh my goodness.
What?
Is he talking about the air in space again?
No, it's
He's
apparently
talking
the
about
air,
the
in the zircon. But like,
Talking
But
about
he
the
also
helium
has
in
yet
the
to say the
rocks?
word zircon.
yeah,
Is he? I think he's talking about heliums and rocks again.
he might be. Which, by the way,
Because-
helium.
Also-
You can't just call helium air.
He can.
Wait.
He can do that.
Well,
If he calls air in space, he'll for sure call helium air. Come on.
oh my goodness. Oh yeah, and Vishanti reminded me that that's the movie where it's established that Mario and Luigi's last name is Mario, because otherwise, how could they be the Mario brothers?
It's fair.
So it's Mario and Luigi Mario.
like it.
Maddie,
What?
one of these days we're gonna have to have a little bit of a movie night, and you're gonna have to watch some Mario Brothers.
I love it. That can be some kind of sub count special or something.
Well, we can't broadcast it because we'll get super sued.
That's true.
It's gonna have to be like a Science Friends get together thing.
What if we just interacted it like we were watching it on our screen and we each had a puppet?
Well, we could do the riff tracks thing, where when they do a riff tracks for a copyrighted movie that they don't have the rights to, they just have like a countdown, and you start the movie when the countdown reaches 0. We could do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we could do that.
Okay.
That could be good. We could think or something, or we
Yeah,
can have
we'll-
a science
something.
friends night. Yeah.
That evolution is not true. Now, this just came out from the New York Times. Turns out all humanity, this came out 2018, is related to a single couple. You know, that sounds like something I
Okay, so I'm going to check this article because it sounds like a bad journalistic take on the idea of Y chromosome Adam and mitochondrial Eve. Yeah.
Yeah,
So turns
because
all of
your keyboard makes a really satisfying clacky clap.
that's why I own it.
Mhm.
So this is New York Post. Turns out all of humanity is related to a single couple. If this is the same article, yeah.
You
So
didn't even
it's
get
not
the
even the
newspaper
It
no.
says New York.
Yeah, he says New York Times. It's actually from the New York Post. So yes, Matt Powell got the wrong newspaper.
Honey,
I'm taking a drink. That's just like, dude,
Honey.
come on. It's like the very basic level of citation. This is like 4th grade
Mhm.
level of citation.
Cite your source correctly.
Oh my goodness.
Right, at this point, I do not
mean-
care what your source is. Just cite it correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
like
cite it at all.
let's get to
Oh,
that
that's
point.
straight up. Yep. That's straight up New York Post.
Yep,
I
it's
feel like we should we need to get him in the habit of citing sources, and then we can introduce him to the concept of like MLA style.
all right. So we're gonna read this real quick.
Mhm.
It really is all relative. So this, by the way, turns out all of humanity is related to a single couple by Marissa Delato from November 24th, 2018 on the New York Post, not the New York Times. So a new study revealed that all humans are descendants from the same man and woman who lived 100,000 to 200,000 years ago. Our communal mom and dad got together after a quote-unquote catastrophic event almost wiped out all of the human race. The Daily Mail reported of the study. Oh, great. So this is not a secondary source. This is a tertiary source. Researchers studied the DNA of 5 million animals, including humans, to come to their conclusions. They also found that every 9 out of 10 animals came from the same original creator. Oh, okay. Oh my goodness. This isn't even about mitochondrial Eve and Y chromosomal Adam. This is about the study from 2018 that reported that on average, most extant species have a mitochondrial coalescence time of 100 to 200,000 years. So what that
So-
means is, for
Yeah,
most,
sorry, Dapper, translate that for me.
Okay, so for most species, their mitochondrial Eve lived between 100,000 and 200,000 years ago. That doesn't tell you when the species arose. It doesn't tell you anything about the males of that species, right? Because males don't typically pass on mitochondrial DNA. Nor does it mean that Y chromosome Eve was the only living female at the time. She almost certainly wouldn't be. And so
Right.
I'll do an example, right? Maddie, let's say that you, in the distant future, have a bunch of descendants, including a
Great.
bunch of direct line female descendants, right? So
Had a bunch of babies.
you had
These
a
live
bunch
in
of
my
daughters.
arms.
You had a bunch of daughters. They had a bunch of daughters. They had a bunch of daughters. Presumably sons too, right? Okay. Now you're not currently the only living female adult human.
That's factual.
Okay. Just making sure we get this established. You know, don't want to give the wrong impression here. So now let's just say that by some weird happenstance, all of the female humans who end up colonizing Mars just happen to be your many times great granddaughters in a direct female line.
Okay.
Oh, drink for Godzilla. And then something horrible happens. You know, the big one asteroid comes and Earth is just obliterated. So now the only humans around are on Mars. Guess who becomes Mitochondrial Eve? Yup. Now, does that mean that the human race is all descended from you? Yes. But does it mean that you were the first human female? No. Does it mean that you lacked contemporary human females? No. And you don't even need a disaster. If over time, a particular mitochondrial line tends to, on average, reproduce more often than other lines, over time, that will be the only remaining line, because the other ones will simply fail to have surviving female line descendants. They don't even have to lose their descendants, right? Because you got to remember, some of these people on Mars are also going to be descended from your other female contemporaries. They just didn't have direct line female ancestry. There was a son somewhere in there. So all this means is that the most recent mitochondrial common ancestor for most species around today that were tested was from somewhere between 100 and 200,000 years ago. That's what this is actually reporting.
I would also like to point out that this article seems to be assuming a level of monogamy amongst all species.
Well, yeah, there's like the one couple thing. Yeah, this is basically the New York Post doing an extremely poor take on a Daily Mail story that was already a really poor take. So I remember the science reporting on this. It was abysmal, because I then went and I was like, what is this study? And I checked the study.
Yeah.
And yeah, I recognize that the headline, study finds that 9 out of 10 extant animal species has mitochondrial coalescence time between 100 and 200,000 years ago, is not a catchy headline. I get it. But that doesn't excuse what amounts to just lying about the study.
Right.
So Matt didn't...
You can
Matt is
you can
too-
make that a
sorry.
catchier headline and honestly represent the science.
Yeah.
It's possible.
Matt is now 2 bad sources removed from the actual paper he's trying to talk about. And the reason I know this off the top of my head is because it was such a stupid thing going on in 2018 and into 19.
Red. Back in Sunday school.
You know what
A new study revealed that
you know what you didn't read back in Sunday school, Matt, was that Adam and Eve were 100 to 200,000 years ago.
all humans are descended from the same man and woman. People say, "Oh, Matt, you're just using the Bible." No, this is the New York Times. Even the New York.
Well, it's
No,
not,
it's
but-
the New York Post.
not,
We're gonna
though.
take a drink.
Times knows there was a single couple that produced everybody that we see here.
No. Oh, also, the study doesn't mention anything about a catastrophic event. That's an invention of the science press. That's not a real thing from the study. Because nothing about
good.
having... The thing is, nothing about having a non-infinite mitochondrial coalescence time, which you would expect to never have an infinite thing, implies that there was some kind of disaster. What it means is the average time it takes for one mitochondrial line to become the only surviving one in extant animals is between 100 and 200,000 years. That's all it means.
Yeah. Well, like science-wise, that's a really cool discovery, but
Oh, yeah.
like this
But it's
doesn't
not this
follow
discovery.
from that.
Right. Right. You're taking extreme leaps in what the science is actually saying.
Yeah.
So they also concluded that 9 out of 10 animals came into being at the same time.
Okay, so the other 10, or sorry, the other 1 out of 10 weren't part of the same creation event or something? Because that's what he's trying to link this to.
Mm-hmm.
So apparently God made 10% of the animals long before he made the other 90% of animals. Don't know why. Sure.
It was practice.
So Bit Bear says, how do we know that the mitochondrial Eve was even human? What if there was a human precursor? So you can define a mitochondrial Eve for essentially any given population, right? And what ends up happening is you can notice that for Homo sapiens, the mitochondrial divergence or coalescence time, is considerably younger than the divergence time for Homo sapiens from other hominins, which means that. So I can see Maddie spinning the wheels here.
No. Can I try to summarize?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Mitochondrial Eve doesn't have to be human, but the evidence suggests that she is.
Yeah, it is at least theoretically possible that you could have 2 mitochondrial lines surviving from a time when humans hadn't diverged from other hominins. That's not.
Mm-hmm.
It's not technically impossible. It's extremely unlikely. But we happen to know that because the mitochondrial coalescence time is significantly shorter than the divergence time for Homo sapiens from other species in the genus Homo, that mitochondrial Eve would have been a Homo sapiens.
Yeah.
So that is, and given the fact that generally speaking, divergence time for most extant species is more than 1 to 200,000 years, that means, according to this study at least, that also for most species, their mitochondrial Eve is also a member of that species, and not a earlier species which then diverged into the current ones.
So I think that's maybe probably another cool part of this study, because to that person's question, like I can't think of an empirical reason why, why like there's no like law of physics that dictates that mitochondrial Eve must be of the same species, right? But it is like that's how it normally plays out, and we can figure that out based off of studies like this.
Bit Bear also says, separately, Y chromosome Adam may not have ever met mitochondrial Eve. Actually, we know that he definitely didn't. Y chromosome Adam comes several tens of thousands of years after mitochondrial Eve. So humans reached their Y chromosome coalescence more recently, or their Y chromosome coalescence is more recent than the mitochondrial coalescence. Sorry. I know there's no such thing as X chromosome Eve because that's not how X chromosomes work. They have crossover.
Right.
So what we're going to do, though, is we're going to take a intermission. I'm going to refill my drink and hopefully figure out in my brain why I cannot differentiate between X chromosomes and mitochondria, because they're very, very different.
I believe in you.
All right. We will be back in about 4-ish minutes. So please hang tight. Watch the wonderful intermission video I have ready for you.
Okay, I'll be right back. Oh, Boji.
I want to take a moment to talk about something serious. There is a problem facing late surviving non-avian dinosaurs in modern America. Hunting is very strictly regulated, and only allowed at certain times of the year. This means that for much of the year we have to rely on farm-raised food, which means money. If you want to help a starving dinosaur, please consider donating on Patreon, or buying from my merch store. Links are in the description. Please help. Dinosaurs all over YouTube are depending on you to help them through the hunting off-season.
お何
Your
誰
favorite chef.
おゴジラですか
Oh shoot. Hello.
Welcome back.
Okay.
And how many segments are there?
So I quickly
はい、ゴジラさん。
That's
Nope,
where we
I'm good.
disagree.
I've switched over to Hatch Green Chili Lager.
Nice.
So spicy and so good.
はい。
All right, guys, we are back. Sorry about that little production snafu, but here's the solution, right? Everybody here, go donate to my Patreon or join the channel, and then I can afford a producer. There you go.
Also, I am enjoying a Hatch 22 Hatch Chili Lager.
They are aware.
Yeah, I know. I just thought I'd give it a proper plug.
But
Not
by the
that
way,
you're sponsored by this particular brewery, but
hey, Hatch Chili Brewery, if you want to sponsor me, I will totally drink your beer on stream. Just putting it out there.
would you animate a can of beer into your dino hands?
Are you
Your
kidding me?
teeny
I would
tiny-
actually put the legit Hatch, was it Hatch Chili Brewery logo and everything on there.
Mhm.
I would have a set of cans for each kind that they sent me, so it was the right can
It's Stone Cloud Brewery, by the way.
of Stone Cloud.
But,
Fair enough.
yeah.
But like, yeah, if I got a brewery sponsorship, yeah, I would absolutely make a can or a bottle with the actual label. I would carefully remove that label. I would take a nice high-res picture of it. I would cut it out. I would stick it on the bottle in 3D. It would be perfect.
I want this in my life.
Also,
And then it would take 40 hours to render.
no, it probably wouldn't.
No, it wouldn't.
By the way, I'm seeing about 20 people not having liked, so come on, guys. All right, here we go. It's liking is actually something I'm legitimately asking you to do. Unlike joining my Patreon, which is more or less tongue-in-cheek, like if you want to, go ahead, but I recognize why not everyone would want to do that.
What does that sound like? They say, well, that's unsure. Wow, that's unexplained. How did that happen?
No one's saying it's unexplained how that happened. What the actual scientists are saying is that's not what we're saying.
Mhm.
Well, that's what people like Matt Powell are saying,
Right.
right?
I'm
They
taking
don't know.
a drink for the smug on his face right now.
Yeah. You know what? I should like screenshot that and like make it into a nice little like logo. So it's like just black and white, sort of like a silhouette type thing, and make
Mhm.
like a shirt that just says smugly arrogant.
Smug.
Would anyone be interested in a
On the back, can it say the air and space?
yes?
All right, I would buy that.
I might have to make a Matt Powell dunk T-shirt. It's just a T-shirt dunking on Matt. Although I don't know what the legal things are with using someone's image, but maybe if I obscure it enough, like we can say, oh well, it doesn't say your name, and it's not super obviously you, so it could be anyone. Which might mean I have to cut this part of the stream out to a. I probably shouldn't do that just because.
Well, it's off the table.
All right, well, here we go.
Clearly.
They say, well, Matt, it's only 9 out of 10 animals. This is what some guy responded. It's only 9 out of 10.
Okay, so some guy said that. What did the scientists say, Matt? Because I'm sure that you definitely checked with the contributor for correspondence, right? Because the most papers, the first listed author, you can email, and they take on the obligation of correspondence regarding the paper for the next few years. Eventually, that's no longer the case, right? But like usually, you can check with the authors.
Eventually, people die, but like, yeah, that's why your email is listed on the cover page. It's part of the thing.
So
Also, I just can't like I know he didn't read the paper if he didn't even read the tertiary news article because he cited the wrong newspaper.
Right. So
And it's
here's
not just a slip of the tongue. Like, he straight up pasted the New York Times
The
logo.
Times,
Well, here-
yeah.
Right there.
here's what I think happened. I think he was making the slideshow one day and found this New
Mhm.
York Post article, and he slapped in some screenshots, right?
Mhm.
But then, like weeks later, he hadn't given this talk yet, and he was like, "Oh, where did I read that article?" And then, rather than actually just taking the 3 seconds to Google it, he was like, "I was New York something, whatever. I'll just put a New York Times logo on there." I think that's
Mhm.
what actually happened.
Well, but then he
Probably.
was able to, like, get the screenshot of the article and put it in his PowerPoint.
Right,
And-
because that happened days or weeks after or before he figured
Yeah.
maybe he should say where the article is from. And then rather than checking, he days later was just like, my memory's good enough. Me, the Air and Space Powell's memory is totally sufficient to accurately cite this article.
So it's not creation. The rest evolved. No, it's called microevolution. It's variation. The other 10%.
Dude,
Okay,
the others are older.
but here's the other thing. Yes, humans, Homo sapiens from 100,000 years ago, and Homo sapiens today, that diversity is in fact explained by microevolution. But that fact doesn't do anything to negate common ancestry between humans and other apes. Like that's like when Kent Hovind says, "Oh, all these varieties of dogs are still just dogs," and it's like, yes, Kent,
Yep. That's factual.
you are
Thank
not wrong there.
Thank you for demonstrating some understanding.
Right. However,
Connect the dots.
the fact that they are still dogs doesn't negate their common ancestry with, say, raccoons. You still have to account for all the genetic and morphological evidence linking those two groups.
Is easily explained by variations within the kinds, built-in genetic heterozygosity. So it also said that the research shows that we have very low genetic diversity. So if we all evolved from a single-celled organism, that organism, let's pretend evolution's true. Let's go into fantasy land
Oh, okay, good.
and pretend that the universe just popped into existence from nothing, that it rained on the rocks for millions of years. It's funny.
You know what really is funny? Is that when he's saying, let's pretend evolution is true, the next two things he says aren't evolution. I'm taking a drink for that.
Mhm. I would also like to take a drink for his inability to stay on one train of thought.
Yeah, like, seriously. Is the next thing we're going to... Here's
Well,
my
you-
prediction. Here's my prediction. At some
Yeah.
point, we're going to, for no reason, switch to talking about abortion.
Ooh.
I think at some point that's going to happen.
Okay,
don't-
can I put my vote in for racism?
Ooh,
That
yeah.
instead of like the thing we're randomly going to transition into.
I maybe, although, so my thing is, in actual talks, young Earth creationists tend to pay lip service to the idea that, the Bible says that because we're all descended from Adam and Eve, that there aren't any real human racial differences that aren't
Oh.
more than superficial.
Right. No. I think at some point before we talk about abortion, he's going to start talking about how evolution makes everybody a racist.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That seems like a good
Yeah.
thing. A good
Okay.
a good
Like a
guess.
bet.
Yeah. So I don't even think we have to restrict it to before or after. I think if he brings up
Okay.
evolution is the cause of racism, we can take a drink for that.
Okay.
Especially if it's just out of the blue.
Guys, I've only done, 62 of these? I have no idea. I can't predict what he's going to say. It could be anything.
Yeah.
Except for something smart.
Well, obviously.
The Bible says it rained on the rocks for 40 days or rained on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights back in the time of Noah. And
Okay.
evolutionists always say, stop right there. That's crazy. Who could possibly believe that it would rain for 40 days and 40
I mean, I believe it. I've lived in Washington State, so
I was going to say, right? Like,
I don't know of too many people whose objection to the flood is, well, that's too many days in a row for it to rain.
Well, I have an objection of the concept that it rained constantly everywhere for 40 days and
Globally,
40
yes.
nights. So, and just to point out for the YEC folks that might listen to this, hey team, that whole like raining on rocks for millions of years. One, there's a lot to unpack there, but two, that's not everywhere at all time for that whole time period. But turns out it rains. Guys, rain exists.
Well, isn't there supposed to have been that period when it rained more or less constantly for about 2 million years?
I honestly don't know my paleoclimate well enough for that.
Okay.
I'd have to look at it.
Because I do seem to remember there being that thing, but like that's the other thing is like
But
it wasn't during the Phanerozoic, and I'm not great at like Phanerozoic
Yeah.
paleoclimate. I'm even worse at like, you know,
And I am real suspicious of a claim that's like, again, rained everywhere constantly for a long period of time.
Yeah.
Right? Like it or just even for one day on all of planet Earth, it rained. Like, I disagree.
by the way,
You know?
I gotta say thank you to the people here because I'm seeing a lot of new names, and that's really great.
Hi, new friends.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys are here. I've noticed. I usually notice when someone starts binging Kent with Bent because I start to get a lot of comments on sequential episodes, and it's like, dude, you have quite the journey to go. Good luck. So it's
Enjoy it, enjoy. For those of you who are on episode 63 and we're up to like 400 by now or 5,000 or who knows, enjoy the journey.
yeah.
Enjoy the journey.
We'll see you at the
For
finish line.
anybody watching this in the future, because instead they're choosing to watch LeVar Burton
On Jeopardy.
on host Jeopardy, like that's an acceptable reason
Oh, yeah.
to
Well, here's
not
the thing.
watch this live.
Jeopardy doesn't last very long. Afterwards, you
It's
can just
true.
tune into the next Kent with Bent
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
It's true.
So, but I do understand why you might want to watch LeVar Burton over Dapper Dino because I mean, look, he's got a better voice. He's better looking. He was on Star Trek.
Yes.
I mean, I get it.
And Reading Rainbow.
Yeah.
Right.
Did he introduce you to?
And he's just
Good.
one of the coolest guys I've never met before.
Yeah.
It's true.
40 nights. Folks, Google reigned for millions of years sometime.
Oh, hey, that is what
The
I was
first thing
talking
that
about.
pops up is that time that it rained for 2 million years.
Hey, look, I anticipated. Does that count as a prediction? Can we drink
Yeah.
for that? Okay.
We'll drink for that.
So
No, I have to
whatever they
Google
made-
this.
It's
Nah.
straight up linking to the old man of the mountain.
Wait, like from New Hampshire?
I don't know. I'm not familiar with the story. But maybe.
What is
Oh, wait, that link doesn't work.
What is
Oh,
that
it's a
time?
PDF.
Okay.
Why do they keep...
Oh,
All right.
I'm gonna hit play while we Google
Yeah.
this a bit.
Make blanket statements. It's just the fallacy of false equivalence that they want to put onto us.
All right, so it looks like he's about to change subjects. Did anyone pull up that time it rained for 2 million years?
Oh, we just switched from a dry to a wet climate. Sorry.
So it didn't rain for 2 million years straight everywhere.
We've switched from millions of years of dry. Okay. Sorry, there's a Nature article. I'm okay. Nearly any place where geologists find rocks of that age, of this time period in that 2 million years, there were signs of wet weather. This so-called Carnian pluvial episode coincides with some massive evolutionary shifts. So we had a big climate shift from a mostly dry climate to a mostly wet climate. I would have to know more about like this. I just, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Actually, the Venerable Bee points out that he thinks there was a PBS Eons episode about it, and I agree. I also
Okay.
think there was a PBS Eons, which, by the way, if you guys aren't watching PBS Eons, what are you doing with your life?
That's me. I need to fix that because
Yeah.
I love PBS Space Time, but there's not a whole lot of other PBS
Oh,
shows that I've been
watching
watching, and I know they're good.
PBS Monstrum, and
I've
it's
seen some of that,
definitely not for D&D idea.
But anything can be for D&D ideas, though. It's just how to adapt it. So,
But I love obscure folklore. Like, it's so fun.
actually, I've taken my first steps towards having a setting idea in the background of my brain and turning it into actual notes about a D&D setting.
Okay, proud of
So-
you.
Yes. Maddie, you and I can discuss at a later date, or just after the show or something. But yeah,
Mhm,
well, we're gonna have to talk because I might have to pick your brain about climate. Because if I want to have a jungle or something or a desert, I want to know if I'm putting it in a stupid place.
Mhm.
All right, but here we go.
Now, the only evidence that evolutionists point to for us turning into different creatures over time is mutations. I'm going to try to simplify this the best that I can. So they think that if you
Why?
mutate, so if a
Because his audience can't possibly understand it as well as he does because he's an expert.
Listen, if you watched X-Men, you understand mutation.
I'm taking a drink for that. Maddie, please. Don't get your biology information from X-Men, guys. You can't just have a baby with wings or laser vision. It isn't how biology works.
You definitely can't do that.
Yeah. And by wings, I don't just mean that has wings. I mean it has extra limbs that happen to just be bird wings. Because obviously some things can have babies that have wings, like birds or bats.
Yeah.
But humans can't have babies with wings, let alone extra limbs that are perfectly formed bird wings. That, by the way, also don't have muscle attachment sites.
Mm.
frog,
Which X-Men are you referring to?
What was his name? I think his name was Archangel or something.
Archangel?
Yeah.
I was thinking Archangel.
Well, it's one of the more ridiculous of the mutants. It's like, oh, I just
Uh-huh.
got extra limbs, and they just happen to be dinosaur arms. Deal with it.
Yeah.
Like, wait, what? Why? No.
How?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's listen to Matt
Mutate,
explain mutation.
it's going to grow new features. It's going to mutate a different thing. So you go from
So, okay, one thing I want to point out is that in any given mutation, you're really unlikely to gain a new, like, organ or something like that. Now, when you say new feature, if you mean, like, a brand new protein, that can happen. So, for instance, let's say that you have a duplication event where a chunk of your genome containing a particular gene for some particular protein is duplicated. Okay, well, now you have another copy of the gene for that protein. And then subsequently, one of the new one of those two copies can mutate to create a new protein, and that can be said to be gaining a new trait immediately. But what creationists are usually talking about is like arms from like nothing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, that's not how the evolution of morphology works. All of these things are just little modifications of what came before, and it's only after a much longer period that we can say we have something new. So, for instance, the lungs are probably evolved from diverticula of the digestive system that were used that originally didn't have much use, but eventually, because they didn't directly lead to the digestive system, they could then be adapted to do things like gas exchange. And you have lots of things like that, right? Like
Yeah.
like arms share the same bony components as some types of lobe-finned fish fins. But clearly, those fins aren't your arm, right? Like, a coelacanth can't go, solder together a computer. You could, but it can't. But still, it's just underlying. It's superficial changes to underlying structures that over time diverge to the point where it looks like new things have appeared.
Yeah. And I just, so like with Matt and a lot of YEC crowd, there's two things that I think they really, 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 really struggle with. Two basic concepts. One is the concept of long periods of time, right? Like thinking in long periods of time is very difficult for them. And then two, thinking in terms of populations instead of individuals.
Yeah.
That's
You get that a lot with young Earth creationists when they say, have you ever seen a dog evolve into, and it's like, no, because that's not how evolution works.
not
A
how that
dog
works.
can't evolve.
right.
The population of all dogs, or even a subset of population of dogs, can evolve.
Mhm.
So we can watch the land race of dogs that lived in, say, Southeast Asia, or actually South Asia, evolve into the land race of dogs known as dingoes that are now primarily feral. Actually, I guess at this point they're basically wild because they've diverged sufficiently from their domesticated ancestors to basically be a wild population. But yeah,
Are
so
their ears less floppy now?
and their tails are straighter. Not completely straight. They're straighter. They look and act more like wild animals, although they're still relatively less scared of and aggressive towards humans than, say, actual completely wild animals that have never been domesticated. But they are also more wild. Like, they are more dangerous. It's more dangerous to approach a dingo than a feral dog in the streets of some city.
Okay.
But that being said, they are routinely kept as pets by various Aboriginal cultures. In fact, sometimes they're even breastfed in Aboriginal cultures. I mean, it's not like if you're living in the middle of the outback, you got easy access to puppy chow, 5,000 years ago.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
A quick note on my I've had an epiphany in the last year, and that is that unless you have been trained to think about people and species in terms of populations instead of individuals, you don't naturally think about that. Because if you think about public health measures are designed to work on populations, not on individuals.
yeah.
And so I think that's actually been a big disconnect between the science communication and health policy communication and the general public, is that the people setting health policy are thinking in terms of populations, whereas every individual receiving that information is thinking in terms of themselves and their family. Right?
I agree, because I've had to numerous times explain to different people that the reason you wear a mask isn't because you're less likely to get sick if you do. It's because if you're already shedding the virus, which you might not know about, you're less likely to spread it to other people. So other people are wearing masks for your protection. You're wearing a mask for other people's protection. And so,
well, and whether or not I wear a mask doesn't really affect the probability of me getting sick or not. Right. But everyone wearing a mask does affect the probability of me getting sick.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Which also puts us in sort of a the prisoner's dilemma, right?
Oh yeah.
I know this is a bit off topic, but the prisoner's dilemma is a cool idea in game theory, right? So you have two prisoners, and they're taken in for a crime that they supposedly have colluded on, right? So they're partners in crime, literally. And they're separated, and each one is told, look, if you confess, you'll get immunity, and your partner will, go to prison or whatever. But the cops don't actually have enough evidence to convict either of them without a confession. So now you're in a situation where you don't know whether or not your buddy is going to confess. But if neither of you do, you go free. But if he confesses and you don't, you go to prison. And if you confess and he doesn't, you go free. So your safest bet is to confess. But then, but if neither of you did, but the only way to guarantee that neither of you will is to communicate. And so in this situation, we have a situation where it's similar. It doesn't really matter to you in particular. This is not an exact analogy, but it's a similar kind of thing. Because you can't effectively communicate who has a disease, it makes some amount of sense from a personal, selfish standpoint to just say, well, I'm not going to wear a mask because it won't prevent me from getting sick, and it's less comfortable, it's less fun, I don't like it. I mean, that's true. I don't like it much either.
Yeah.
But because you don't know what's going on, if everyone adopts that thing that is reasonable for one person to do, it ends up being worse for everyone. Just like if you confess, it ends up being worse than if neither of you had confessed. So just everyone wear your masks if you need to. Not everyone is in a situation where you need to, but when you are, do it. And also go get vaccinated.
Yeah, get vaccinated. Join the club. We're very cool.
Bido Bear says your mask helps you a little bit and helps everyone else a lot. It's a very little bit that it helps you. Let's be honest. Wearing a mask is going to have almost no effect on how likely you are to get infected. It's other people wearing masks that have an effect on you. But yes, still do wear that mask. And in fact, the CDC has changed their recommendations. So if you're living in the United States and you're trying to follow the CDC guidelines, they are now saying that vaccinated people, because of the Delta strain, which vaccinated people are shedding similar amounts of virus to non-vaccinated people when they're infected, they're suggesting that you go back to wearing masks indoors in situations where you can't always maintain social distancing. So bring back out the masks. Next time I go to the grocery store, I'm definitely bringing my mask.
Yep.
The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles all the way up to Mankind.
I'm taking a drink.
What did we cut to?
The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Oh my
I
goodness.
should have guessed that when you were guessing like abortion. I should have guessed Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Uh-oh. Oh no! No!
What's up?
Are they
I don't know what's going on.
I have no
are
idea what
they
just
mad
happened.
about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
Yeah, they hate Matt Powell.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
They're very upset.
I don't know what just happened.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. You know, I used to like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but that was fiction. That's not science. But
Yes, I will take a drink for Matt getting that right. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are indeed fiction and not science. So everybody,
Ooh, do you just
take a
do you
drink.
appreciate his like acting change of tone there? Like, and I used to like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but they are fiction,
Yes,
right? Like
he's got that.
It's like whiplash.
You know, maybe Matt actually missed his real calling to just be a stage actor.
Yeah, dude, I would watch Matt Powell be in any Shakespeare play. I would watch him chew that scenery, and it would be amazing.
You know what? I think he would do a good job on in a production of the Book of Mormon because he kind of looks like a Mormon missionary because he's got that baby face
no.
going and he's got the clean shave. Yeah.
He's
Like-
comfortable wearing ties.
Yep. I could totally picture Matt Powell in like a white shirt with a black tie and a black, like blazer and pants that has a little name tag that says Elder Powell.
Elder, hello, my name is Elder Powell.
So Vishanti says Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is canonically in the same universe as Daredevil, and also Power Rangers, which means Power Rangers is in the Marvel universe apparently, but also the DC universe because they recently did a crossover with DC. So
Ooh. So by the transitive property,
Right.
are Marvel and DC in the same universe?
yep, along with the Mutant Ninja Turtles and Power Rangers, it's all one big happy family.
I love it.
Yep. Also, in the first Ninja Turtle and Power Rangers crossover, there wasn't even an explanation. The bad guy's just like, "Hey, let's go to New York," and now the Ninja Turtles are there. It's like, okay.
That's like those old Scooby-Doo crossovers where like Scooby-Doo and the gang meet the Harlem Globetrotters. Scooby-Doo and the gang meet Batman. We just run into them.
Yep. Hey, you know what? Batman versus Alien was pretty cool. Or no, it was Batman versus Predator. Yeah, sorry, Predator.
Okay.
But either way, I mean, they're both sort of like tech-based hunter types that go. Yeah, it's a cool idea.
But they say, oh, they're mutant Ninja Turtles. So here's the thing: the more mutants that you are, the more likely you are to die.
I'm gonna take a drink.
What?
That's not generally true on an individual level involving mutations from reproduction. Now, if we're talking like, oh, hey, you were exposed to, a whole bunch of ionizing radiation, now you're going to get cancer, like, okay, but that's not the kind of mutation we're talking about.
Right.
Just about everyone has about the same amount of mutations from their parents. And
Yeah.
people who have slightly more or slightly less are not more or less likely to die, nor has mortality in infants been on a steady decline as more and more mutations occur.
It's steady incline, but yes.
Yeah, so mortality is not it's not on the incline, yeah. So it is declining.
Yeah.
Because we die as humans, our genetics copy, and we mutate to death. But a mutation, the definition, is a change in the DNA sequence, and it's due to mistakes. So mutation.
Taking a drink for the word mistakes. Mistakes are what happens when some kind of agent intends to do a thing and then does it the wrong way. This is just chemistry, right? Going in a
Is he
slightly
referring-
unexpected way.
Yeah. Is he referring to like a transcription error of DNA?
I think so.
Patient probably.
Well, no, not transcription error, yeah, because that would just have a problem with the actual like mRNA. So I think he's talking
Okay.
about a copying error.
It's
Copying
it's
error. Sorry,
replication.
that's what I meant.
It's
replication error.
Replication, yeah.
Listen, we're talking about biology, and I've had one biology class in my adult life.
Well, you know what? You're in with a group of people who have a reasonably decent amount of biology knowledge when you're hanging out with, like me and Erica and Dr. Dan and whatnot. So we can kind of help. I'm not exactly an expert or anything, but you know, I've done my homework.
Yeah.
Mutations are mistakes
Mhm.
in our bodies. So they think that by all these mistakes,
See, the word mistake is loaded, right? It's much more loaded than just the word error, because like your computer can have an error. Your computer didn't make a mistake. You can't blame your computer. It just did what was always going to do. It just wasn't what you were expecting.
I was just going to say that I feel like Matt Powell does not have enough Bob Ross in his life to let him know that there's no mistakes, only happy accidents.
That's true. And isn't Bob Ross like on a constant stream on Twitch? Isn't there a Twitch channel owned by like PBS that just constantly streams episodes
I
of?
hope so.
Well, I don't think it's always on, but it's
It's a thing.
'cause
now.
I've been told, because I was subbed and then I unsubbed, but like followed, but it's not always on. But I was told recently that it's back on again.
Okay.
And I think when it's on for like nonstop for a week or however long.
Matt,
Twitch.
go to Twitch, watch some Bob Ross videos.
Get yourself some Bob Ross in your life, man.
Yeah. Look, you can learn to paint as well as get a better attitude in life.
Yeah, do it with your family, right? Like everybody get together, you get your
Yeah.
canvases, we can get some artistic expression going. It'll be great.
That actually does sound like a really good family activity.
That sounds like a great family activity.
Presuming all the kids are old enough to be trusted with paint.
That's fair. But like if they're too little to be trusted with paint, like give them a crayon, you know?
There you go, yeah. There you go.
Yeah. Like even if they don't have the attention span to follow the video, they get like weird coloring as a family, and that sounds great.
Yeah.
You know?
we've become man. By all these mistakes, life has become alive. By all these mistakes, does that make any sense?
First, mutation wasn't involved in abiogenesis because of, you know, there not being genes and whatnot. Because
The nothing mutated into a gene. Oh no.
But life finds a way.
that's true.
No, because none of evolution makes sense. Because it's not true. Every single field of evolution is
Okay,
easily defeated. You can defeat it from
honeyboo child.
We taking a drink for how ridiculous that is?
But does none of evolution make sense, or does none of evolution make sense to you?
Right. There are things that I don't understand, and I don't say, well, then they makes no sense to anyone, and everyone's lying about it.
Right.
If they pretend that's not how that works.
Here's a great example. Like, I am completely in awe of anybody that can do any type of like visual medium art. You want to see my best attempt? My best attempt is this map.
How'd you
That's
draw
it.
that well? Because I can't do that.
It's squiggles and squares, and that's all I got.
This set, by the way, is one of my visual art expressions.
Right. So like I just mean that like that stuff baffles me, and I legitimately can't wrap my head around picking the right color. Right? Like I can't do it. But I love art and it's beautiful. I'm really glad other people can do that. I just can't, right? Or I in my very like I'm very positive towards like you can get better at anything you try, right? So like I haven't put the time into learning how to do that, right? So I have so much respect for the people that have, or that people that speak another language, right? I can't do it. I try. I have a little bit of Spanish, but I'm so bad at it, and I'm so embarrassed when I try, right? So like people who are legitimately like bi or trilingual, like I'm just in awe, and I don't know how they do it, and that's great. That doesn't mean I think they're actually not bilingual, right?
Yep.
Right,
Just
yeah.
because you don't understand personally doesn't mean it doesn't make sense.
Doesn't mean it doesn't make sense or that it's not true. And I understand that can be really frustrating if you're trying to learn it. Like, this just doesn't make sense to me. But like that doesn't mean it's not true. Okay.
Tesla Ranger says I need a Bob Ross original hanging in my lair. So here's the thing about an original, right? I'm not sure how you put an original painting into a digital picture.
Oh.
I don't think it works. Like if I had the Tron scanner that could physically put a human into the internet, then I could do that. I could like physically scan the original painting and then it digitize the actual painting itself and push it into the computer physically.
Just make it like 3D art, like Time Lord technology.
Or okay, get your hands on the original like film of one of those episodes, right?
Okay.
Right, and then use the like still image from that film and digitize that image and put it in.
But it's still not the original painting.
No.
It's not even the original frame.
Okay, well, my idea was stupid. So
Okay, here we go.
Cosmology,
Keep going.
biology, geology, cosmology, every single field defeats evolution, and they know it, and that's why they're trying to convince people otherwise.
Yes, the only I know evolution is fake, which is why I try to explain it and show why creationists are wrong about it. I do that only because I know it's fake. Because apparently, for some reason, my motive is to intentionally mislead people for the purposes of I'm gonna take a drink.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I already take a big swig for that one. That was
Aaron Ra, the sun god, he was in an interview recently with your son, brother, Eric Hovind. And Eric asked,
How much you want to bet that Kent Hovind right now is seething because Matt dared to mention Eric?
I also like there's a really important comma in that sentence, which is with your son, comma, brother, and not with your son, brother.
Well,
What
yes.
is that?
Yeah.
I wouldn't put it past him to think the sun brother is like a brother of the sun. Maybe the moon is the sun brother.
No, this would be like you're in Alabama.
Incest. I was making an incest
Yes.
joke.
Not an astronomy joke.
No.
I just wouldn't put it past Matt Powell to think things like that.
Well,
Yeah.
um,
That took me a second to parse that sentence.
so there's also the thing where it's like, I like that he's like Eric. It's like you don't have to specify Eric because there's only one son that Kent Hovind will even acknowledge. Because Kent Jr., as far as Kent Hovind is concerned, might as well not even exist, as far as I can tell.
That makes me sad.
Yeah. Well, you know why? He's disabled, and Kent Hovind is ashamed of it.
Yeah, so that makes me sad.
Yeah, as if you didn't need reasons to dislike Kent Hovind.
Did you know that today is today's the anniversary of the passing of the Americans with Disabilities Act?
I did not know that.
So that's a really important act, and also access for folks with disabilities is super important and often underfunded and like we just don't pay attention to it all the time. But it's very
I have to say,
important.
personally, as someone who hauled a full-grown man in a wheelchair up a flight of steps, yeah, ramps are awesome.
Yeah.
Get
Well,
ramps.
and, yeah. Get ramps, get access, have like reasonable accommodations, listen to disabled folks. They'll tell you what they need.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so
That's,
that was
I had to turn that into a positive.
No,
Yeah.
Yeah, no, fair. Given how absurdly depressing the Hovind family drama has been, primarily caused by Kent. Because while I don't have any, huge amount of love for Eric, I don't have any evidence that he's been an abusive father or brother or husband. So, I mean, he's automatically a step up by basically not just being a child abuser, as far as I can tell.
That's fair. Yeah.
asked him, he said, Aaron, if it was the God of the Bible that existed, he said, would you worship him? And Aaron responded that I would not worship it. Talk about hatred for God.
Not necessarily. The way Aaron Ra thinks of God is the way that you might think of Voldemort, right? If Voldemort were real, would you like him? No.
Also, like,
But that doesn't mean I actively hate Voldemort. I don't go to bed at night cursing the name of Voldemort.
Right. Also, Aaron is really good at rhetoric, right? And he used that terminology intentionally to get under y'all's skin.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
You don't have to let him.
No. You don't have to let him. You could let that roll off your shoulders. But it clearly bothered you, so he accomplished his mission with that rhetoric.
That's one of the things is like, you could not let Aaron Ra win as much as he does, because some of the wins he's getting are just getting you to be angry.
Yeah.
You could just not.
Yeah.
You don't
absolutely.
have to. All right, here we go. Come on.
Would not worship it? You know what that tells me is that Aaron Ra doesn't care what the truth is.
How does it tell you that? I'm taking a drink because that doesn't follow at
Because you
all.
can say whatever you want at any time because
Hmm.
you're Matt Powell. Words
Although,
don't even have meanings. Not
I'm
really.
kind of surprised that we haven't gotten to abortion or racism. I don't think we're going to
I
tonight.
Well,
know.
we keep pausing.
Well,
That's
yeah.
probably why.
We keep talking about more interesting things.
Well,
we got
we've been doing about 4 hours, 4 minutes an
Three.
hour ish worth of that's been our ratio.
well, what do we have? Like 20 some
no.
minutes left of Matt talking. I'm sure he'll bring it up.
Well,
It'll be next time though.
That's fair.
The Bible says that we should focus on whatsoever things are pure, right, true, holy, just, etc., etc. If there be any
Like Bob
virtue and if there
Ross.
be any praise.
That's
Yes,
true.
Bob
It's
Ross.
also not the slide you have up though, Matt. But
That's
it's
true.
all right.
Oh, good.
That's
We
fair.
actually, so we get a little preview of whatever he's going to talk about. So apparently, his next slide is about
Yeah.
short period comets, which is going to be fun.
Let's get to it. Let's get to it. I
Hopefully.
believe in it.
Praise, think on these things.
Oh, well, there you
The Bible
go.
says that sin
no,
is
Just
what
scram-
causes
never mentioned the Bible verse he had.
Therefore, as by
listed.
one man sin entered into the world, and
Okay.
death by sin. And so death passed upon all men, for that all have sinned. So mutations are there because of sin, and they're not the hero in evolution.
No.
I'm taking a drink for mutations are because of sin. Oh my goodness! I want to know if people who sin more have more mutations, or they give like I don't know, they produce more mutant babies or something. Like
So wait, what is that? Does that mean that like folks who are lactose intolerant come from a more righteous bloodline?
yes,
Okay,
your
that's
ability,
what I'm taking away from
your
that.
ability to digest milk into adulthood is a sign of how sinful your ancestors were. Deal with it. For $5 from Sphincter of Doom, focus on what is pure. Does that include Coke? I'm gonna say Coke.
Hmm.
Um,
Ooh, by the way, Pure is an excellent horror movie over on Hulu.
have I seen Pure?
It's
I don't
a
think I have.
purity culture themed horror movie, and I love it.
Oh, I've heard of that one.
It's from like 2019. And my husband and I 100% watched it when it came out, and I completely blacked it out. So I rewatched it like last night, and
What that
so
tells
loved
me
it
is Maddie
all
was
over
having
again.
too many of those Hatch chili beers.
Silly Dapper, these just came out this year.
Oh, okay. It must have been a different beer.
Maybe. So that was also when I was in the Navy, so I just fell asleep a lot. That was
Okay, but you were in the Navy, so that also reinforces the beer idea.
yeah, that's fair. All right,
Oh.
I'm not coming out of this smelling like daisies, but it's a great movie, even on the second watch.
Good. I'll have to check it out. It's on Hulu, you said?
Yeah, it's on Hulu.
Wait, it's
yeah.
not one of those things where I have to also have like 8 other subscriptions to ever more expensive
No,
things.
because it's a Hulu original.
Okay. All right.
It was like in 2019. I guess I wasn't in the Navy in 2019, but in 2019 they did like a horror movie a month.
You were a recovering sailor.
I was a recovering sailor.
Okay.
I still kind of am.
Yeah, look, it took me like
we all?
minimum 5 years to even begin to say maybe I'm no longer a recovering sailor. Maybe I'm just a
Right.
human. I mean,
I
dinosaur.
still, yeah, dinosaur. I still definitely like curse more than most folks.
Well, I
working on
had
that
my second instance ever of swearing in public as Dapper Dino not too long ago.
no!
Yeah.
I'm proud of you.
So now the list of people who have managed to get me to break and swear at them includes
Yeah.
Jason Ezard
Okay.
and Danny, the guy who does weird philosophy of science that no one cares about stuff.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So can I tell you how I still know that I like at my heart and soul I'm still a recovering sailor? When I teach undergrad classes, because I do that as a grad student, it's a thing I do. I keep getting feedback that I'm intimidating.
Aww.
And I'm like, I'm so nice though.
Those poor undergrads, Maddie. You gotta be gentle with them.
Well, but like
They haven't been to boot camp.
They haven't, but I do very much like day one because I usually teach freshmen. I set my standards really like because it's like you have to start here and relax,
Yeah.
right? You can't start here and try to amp up. So I start here and I relax and I just tell them the true story that like guys, I do not have patience for cheating. I do not give warnings, only zeros. I have personally kicked kids out of the Navy for cheating, because that's a thing that happens at nuke school. And reporting you to the college is way less paperwork than getting somebody kicked out of the Navy. So, don't make me care about that. And then apparently I'm intimidating. But I also I get intimidating, but also we really liked her. That's the
Okay.
normally my course reviews.
How about this? While
Yeah.
you're giving this speech, pass around a bowl of hard candy.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, because it's hard to be intimidated by the person who's also been like, hey, here's a bowl of, some delicious caramels or something.
Yeah, I have a new mantra, by the way. I have a new mantra, which is, am I intimidating or are you intimidated?
We're going to get a little bit more of Matt Powell in because we're coming up on the point where we're going to start wrapping things up pretty soon.
Okay, let's talk about comments. We'll talk about comments. We can do it.
They say, well, mutations are the hero. It makes us better. A mutation, by definition, mutations are the reasons for cancer. Mutations are the reasons
Technically true. Take a drink.
for Down syndrome and autism.
The Down syndrome is kind of true. The autism,
It's true.
there's some genetic link, it seems, but we're not too clear. So I'm going to take a sip for the Down syndrome, and I'm going to ignore the autism part.
Yeah.
So the things that cause Down syndrome and autism, they say, are what's good. That makes us evolve into humans.
No, it's not the same mutations, you colossal moron. I'm taking a drink for how stupid that is.
Yeah.
What?
Pupper.
Folks, it makes me think of a verse professing them.
Literally, this is as stupid as saying, hey, a lot of people get killed because lead bullets hit them. Therefore, lead is an intrinsically evil and stupid thing. No one should ever use lead for any purpose whatsoever. No. That's not how anything works, buddy.
Benji
So-
the dog.
I have
Behind
two
you.
dogs.
Are they
Yes,
behind you right now?
One is.
Hello.
Aw. Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let's talk
Live
about Matt and
faithfuls.
comments.
Now, out in outer space, God has given us signs that the Earth cannot be billions of years old. And one of those things is short period comets. Now, they orbit the sun every 200 years. And when they get close to the sun, they burn up 3 to 5% each orbit.
That's not a terrible description of short period comets. They do get too close to the sun, and then burn up is a weird choice of words, but I'm not going to say it's wrong. They sublimate some of their volatiles, which I get why Matt is not saying that, because even if he knew how to say that, which I don't think he does,
It's also not.
his
I'm
audience
okay
is
with
not.
using that phrase.
Yeah,
yeah,
I am
I'm
too.
okay with him using that phrase for this communication. It's
So,
not precise, but it's
yeah, I'll
getting the overall idea across.
Yeah, I'll take a drink for that being close enough to accurate that it's reasonable for a lay audience to say comments quote unquote burn up.
Burn up.
Although
Yeah.
his right side picture does look too much like it's actually on fire, which, by the way, guys, comments aren't on fire.
Nope.
But
So they can't be there from billions of years ago. They only last
true. You can drink for that.
True. That is technically true.
10,000 years. Even the secularists know that they can only last 10,000 years, but we still have them.
Well, it's not like it's a hard and fast rule for all short period comments that it's 10,000 years, but it's not a terrible estimate, so okay.
And
Yeah,
so
order of magnitude.
Right, yeah.
secularists were confronted about this. They said, well, what do we do with short period comets? They exist out there. So Dr. Oort came up with something called the Oort cloud. And he said,
If he mispronounces Dr. Ort's first name, I'm drinking for it. Because it's Jan, but it's spelled with a J.
Jan Yor.
Yep.
that the Oort cloud spirals new comets into our galaxy. And that's why we still have comets. But if you Google,
I forgot to move my phone, but that was Godzilla.
is there any evidence that the Oort cloud exists? The answer is that there is no evidence.
No. So I don't know when this was written. I don't really care that much. So here's one of the big pieces of evidence for the existence of the Oort cloud. So we're going to do a little bit of astronomy 101 here. There are a couple of words that I want to teach everybody. One of the words is perihelion, and the other one is aphelion. So perihelion comes from the Greek for peri, meaning near or close, and helios, meaning the sun. Now, it's Helion because you're taking a different case ending, which is more grammar than we're going to get into, but just know that in certain grammatical situations, Greek words change their ending. So, perihelion is when an object orbiting the sun is at the closest to the sun, right? Aphelion is when it's at the farthest distance that it gets in its orbit from the sun, because it's from apo, meaning away from or far from, and again, helios, meaning the sun, right? So we're getting a little bit Greek in here with our astronomy. Now, a curious thing about short period comets is that they all seem to have a relatively constrained aphelion, which means that basically all of them get to their most distance from the sun at a similar kind of distance, right? Why would this be? Well, we combine two things. One is we know that short period comets can't be primordial to the solar system because they don't last long enough, and they all seem to have about the same maximum distance. Well, we happen to note that if you have gravitational interactions between two bodies in a similar orbit, one of two things will happen. The body will be kicked into a lower orbit or a higher orbit. If it's kicked into a higher orbit and it's in at this kind of aphelion, it's likely to be ejected from the solar system entirely. So you're never going to see it. It's going to float off into interstellar space and essentially be gone from our perspective. But if it's kicked into a lower orbit, it can't raise the far away part of its orbit, nor is that aphelion likely to go lower. What's going to happen is, anytime you have a change in your orbit, the opposite side of your orbit changes, right? The local side doesn't. You're going to stay there because you can't go that much farther. You're right there already. So what happens is there's an orbital disturbance, and a comet has at the very other side of its orbit that gets closer to the sun. And what we would predict to see if there's an Oort cloud would be large numbers of short-term comets with this roughly the same orbital distance for aphelion, which is what we see. Therefore, it is likely that there is a reservoir of icy bodies that occasionally interact gravitationally such that some of them are kicked into lower orbits, which then become short-period comets. All of this all comes together into a nice coherent picture, and while it's true that we do not have direct observations of stable orbits in the Oort cloud, these facts together make it extremely unlikely that there isn't an Oort cloud.
There are also initial studies that seem to indicate two stars in particular, Vega and I don't know how it's pronounced, Fomalhaut. They are looking for Oort clouds around these stars, and they found some data. What year was this? I forget what year it said it was, like 2018, I think. But they're going to do further studies. But look, when you have bodies that are really, really tiny, that are that far out, you just can't see them with telescopes, right? But you can check how much light is blocked around other stars for things like this, and they can factor all that in. They can do all the chemical analysis of what they're seeing and see. So yeah.
So I also quickly Googled Oort cloud, right? One, like on like the first thing that comes up, that's like the NASA explaining it. It's like, yeah, this is something that is hypothesized to exist, right? So nobody's saying that like, yes, absolutely, it's there, blah, right? Two, just for like throw some numbers on things, the Voyager 1 spacecraft that launched in the 1960s, it will take it 300 years to get to the edge of the Oort cloud.
Yeah.
And what, 30,000 to get to the outer edge? And its power source will be dead by then. So that's a direct observation is effectively impossible.
With current technology.
With current technology, a direct observation is effectively impossible.
When we build that telescope the size of the sun, we'll find it.
Yeah. But so, guess what we use when observations aren't options? Numerical models. Right? Weird. It's almost like we do that with weather because we only have one planet. So in numerical models, like things work, right? Sorry, I briefly scanned like ResearchGate and I saw some like, oh yeah, there are absolutely like recent papers of like modeling the Oort cloud numerically. And so like, I think there's no scientist worth their salt that would say, like, 100% absolutely the Oort cloud is real. But they would say, like, our best evidence suggests that this exists. And that's a great science is predictive. So, like, don't get mad that we're predicting something
But Maddie,
that
saying
we haven't
things
found yet.
saying things like our best evidence suggests just shows you how worthless science is, because if it knew anything, they would say there is definitely 100% an Oort cloud. I know it for a fact because some book said so.
Mm-hmm.
That's how science should work. What?
False.
We're also going to wrap this up, guys. So I want to say, again, thank you everyone who came by. I also want to give a special thank you to the guys who super chatted. So we have Sphincter of Doom. We also had Carrie Bronson. For some reason, it didn't come up in my list, but I remembered because, you know, I don't know, I remember things. I want to give Maddie a chance to plug anything that's coming up on her channel, and then I will give some, you know, channel news here, and then we're going to get out of here unless there's something that Ben Hovind, no relation, wants to plug.
Oh, hey team, I'm Maddie. You can find me over on Science Side Up. So Thursday is going to be a big day. One, I'm going to have the next Weather 101 video released. That's going to be on virtual temperature. That's a meteorological term that exists. And then Thursday evening, gonna do a live stream on AIG's hot takes on climate change. And I'm real excited.
Nice.
And that is going to be on Thursday instead of I normally live stream on Wednesdays. But tomorrow is my husband's birthday, so we're going to be going out to dinner. So I'll see you guys on Thursday for some jumping into AIG and climate change, and I'm excited.
Interestingly enough, the next thing that I have going is also on Thursday, so 5 p.m. Pacific. What is that? 8 p.m. Eastern?
Yeah, it is.
There you go. I'm going to be releasing the next episode of Canadian Young Earth Creationism. Yeah, there's only one more after this, so there's 2 more episodes to go.
Yeah.
So that's going to come out this Thursday. Saturday, I have to double check what date that is. I think it's another thing on Spirit Science. Yes, so Saturday 31st is going to be Spirit Science. So I am going to extend an open invitation to a fair few creators that I have collaborated with to say, hey, if you would like to come on, you know, we can do something with that. Then the Tuesday after that is going to be another Kent with Bent, unless something weird happens. Then the Thursday after that, I'm not sure. I am coming close to finishing another Speculative Evolution video. If I can finish it by then that is the day it will premiere. And then the Saturday after that, I am doing a Leaving Young Earth Creationism with someone who, interestingly enough, I met on a Smoky Saint stream. So that's not something I ever expected to say, that I'm going to do that, but you know. But that's enough channel news for that. I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye to everyone, and we're going to play the outro. And we will see you all, hopefully, on Thursday, because Thursday is going to be a pretty packed day in terms of awesome science content from people that you're watching right now. So, bye, everybody.
I just want to take a second to thank my channel members and patrons, especially those pledging $20 and above. Bob Knob, Bent Hovind, Ian Chen, Chris Love, Sphincter of Doom, The Venerable Bede, Patrick Dennis, and Res Instance. My channel members and patrons help make this channel possible, and without their support, this channel really wouldn't exist. If you would like to help support the channel as a member or patron, there are links in the description to both join the channel as well as join the Patreon. Patrons and members get mentioned in these credit scenes, as well as getting early access to my scripted videos, and if you pledge $10 or above, you can also get access to various 3D assets that I create for Blender, both for use in the channel, as well as just general giveaways to my supporters to help in any Blender projects they might have. If a monthly or annual pledge isn't for you, then there is also a merch store linked to the description. And if none of that's right for you, please just like and subscribe, because every like and subscription really helps the video out. Thank you.